They go right foot, then left. And what they ain't gonna do is finesse. They done work too hard, too long. It's about time to come and right these wrongs. They about justice and peace.
We can do this.
And if you wanna see some change, say the action starts with me. Biden, let's vote, vote, vote. Harris, let's vote, vote, vote. Biden, let's vote, vote, vote.
Everybody.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Thank you for joining this Biden-Harris campaign grassroots fundraiser with President Barack Obama, Senator Kamala Harris, and Michael B. Jordan. Please.
I lost audio, folks. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our grassroots fundraiser. Thank you all for being here. I know that there are folks all across the country here on this call today, and we're so excited. And thank you for the success of this fundraiser already. We cannot do this campaign without you. And we've said since the very beginning, grassroots supporters are fueling this effort every single day. And we've only got 32 days left to go. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. And we've got some special guests here for you. I'm Vince Evans. I'm going to be moderating. And so with that, I'm pleased to introduce our very first guest. He needs little introduction. The former president of the United States, the 44th president, in fact, one of our forever faves. Please welcome President Barack Obama.
Hey, everybody. Hope you guys are all doing well. Hope everybody is staying healthy. And Vince, thank you. I am thrilled to be here with our next vice president, Kamala Harris. I'm here to be here with Michael B. Jordan, who is such a big star these days. I can't even keep up with what he's in. And but also a wonderful young man who's been working hard on behalf of a whole bunch of issues. And let me start, by the way, by just stating that although we're in the midst of a big political fight, and we take that very seriously, we also want to extend our best wishes to the President of the United States, the First Lady. Michelle and I are hopeful that they and others who have been affected by COVID-19 around the country are getting the care that they need, that they are going to be on the path to a speedy recovery. And it's important, I think, for all of us to remember that even when we're in the midst of big political battles with issues that have a lot at stake, that we're all Americans and we're all human beings, and that we want to make sure that everybody is healthy. And so Michelle and I want to make sure that we acknowledge the President of the United States and the First Lady at a difficult time.
Thank you, Mr. President. So good to have you with us. And now I am pleased to introduce to you a woman that I have a great deal of respect and admiration for, like each of you, and someone I personally, and I know you are too, looking forward to casting your ballot for in just a short couple of days. Some of you may already actually be voting. I have a chance to work for her every day, but I'm most importantly looking forward to casting this ballot for her soon. Please welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Senator Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Vince, and it is my joy to work with you every day. President Obama, I want to thank you always for the leadership, for the inspiration, for the vision that you have had and have shared with us over the many years of your active service in public life, which you continue to serve, you continue to lead. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us for what you do every day. Michael B. Jordan, it's so good to be with you. Your artistry, the gift that you give in so many ways, both on the screen and off, using your voice always to elevate issues that deserve the kind of attention that you bring, and the voice that you give to so many who may not be in the room, but whose voices must be in that room. I want to thank you for all that you do. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I join the president's comments by saying that Doug and I are sharing our deepest prayers for the health and recovery of the president and the first lady. The threat of this virus is real for all of us. And let it be a reminder to all of us that we must remain vigilant and take care of ourselves and take care of each other. So Doug and I wish them both well, and to all of you, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And then, look, the stakes in this election couldn't be higher. Joe Biden and I are grateful to everyone who is joining us today for all that you are doing. And we are so energized by all the enthusiasm that you are bringing to our campaign. And it's all of us in this together. And especially all of the young leaders that we have been talking to who really are pushing and inspiring so much that is about progress in our country. And I'm just really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have today about why this election is so important, but also to dedicate ourselves and rededicate ourselves to what we each can and must do over the next 32 days to really correct the course of our country in a way that we aspire to what can be, knowing what can be, and being unburdened by what has been. Thank you all.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And now the next and final guest that we're so excited to have with us today. He's an actor and a producer, and yes, we are all fans of Black Panther, each and every one of us, but he's more than that. Named one of Time Magazine's most influential for 2020. Please welcome our dear brother, who is an advocate for police and criminal justice and so many issues around the country, Michael B. Jordan.
Appreciate that, Vincent. First of all, honored to be here, honored to be in you guys' presence, President Obama, Kamala. I'm honored to just be a part of this conversation. To be honest, there's a lot of things that matter to me, but I'm here really to listen and to really find out what's at stake, during this election and what we're going to do once we win. This time around is different for me. I'm usually a little, quiet, stay out the way, but I made a promise to myself and my family that I'll use my platform and whatever I could bring to the table, because it's too important to be silent, So yeah, I'm here to just be a part of the discussion.
All right. Well, we've heard from all our special guests. We're going to all get on screen now and start this important conversation, because this really is about voting. Throughout the course of the conversation, you'll hear us reminding you to go to iwillvote.com, where you can get all the voting information. And that's the first question we're going to start off with today. And I'm going to start off with President Obama. Mr. President, the conversation around voting in the country has been fraught, particularly in the final months leading up to this campaign. And folks may be confused out there about how they should vote, when they should vote, and where they should vote, but most importantly, why they should vote. So why don't you tell us, why should folks be voting, particularly those on this Zoom call today and those around the country watching?
Well, let me first of all say, if you're on the Zoom call, I know you're voting. The question is not whether you're voting. The question is whether you're getting your cousin, your uncle, grandma, best friend, coworker, whoever it is that is in your circle of influence to turn out to the polls. And I think there are a couple of messages that I just want to communicate on this issue. First of all, I think we all understand that there are very concrete issues that are going to impact the well-being, the health, the welfare of millions of people determined in this election. And we'll just take one example, and that is the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. And by the way, I'm proud that it's called Obamacare, but I want to acknowledge that it wasn't just Obamacare, it was a Democratic Congress care and a health advocates care. There were a lot of people who fought for a very long time to not solve every problem in healthcare, but to provide 20 million people the chance to have healthcare, to be able to get covered so that if their child got sick, they were able to not only get decent coverage, but also not lose their house or be bankrupted. It's a law that ensured that if you had a pre-existing condition, even if you already had insurance, it made sure that you had protection so that if you lost your job, now you had to buy new insurance. They couldn't discriminate against you just because you had previously been sick. If you had had cancer before, or you have severe asthma or some other condition, before this law, you might be out of luck in terms of being able to purchase insurance. The law made sure that women weren't chronically having to pay a lot more than men for insurance, just by virtue of being women. It lifted lifetime limits, because it used to be you thought you had insurance, but if you had an illness that got expensive enough, the insurance company might say, you know what, you've hit your limit, now you got to go out of pocket. So all that is on the ballot, because we know that it is possible that the Supreme Court, particularly if you now have the president's new appointee on the Supreme Court, is going to be deciding a case as to whether or not that law stands. And if we want to make sure that those 20 million people who have insurance and the millions of others who are getting protection under this insurance have a backstop assurance that they're still going to be covered afterwards, the single most important thing we can do is make sure that we've got a Democratic president, Democratic vice president, and a Democratic Congress. Now, I'm using that as one example, but we could be talking about climate change, what we've witnessed over the course of this summer, what we've witnessed over the course of the last several years, indicates the degree to which this is not a hoax. This, just like COVID-19, is something that is based on science. We have to start dealing with it. We can deal with it, but we're losing time, and it's important for us to step up and cooperate with other countries to make sure that the planet is as accommodating to our children and grandchildren as it has been to us. COVID-19 is on the ballot because we can continue to do better and step up in ways that we've seen other countries do. It's disproportionately impacted folks who are already poor, people of color, and you know, if you have a grandparent or a parent who has been isolated, is scared, is at risk of getting sick, that's on the ballot. Are they going to be in a position in which they can count on the government to have smart policies to ensure that we're able to weather this storm? The people who are out of work, people who are desperately worried right now about paying the mortgage, all that's on the ballot. If you are concerned, if you were one of the folks like Michael B. Jordan during this summer, who were concerned about making sure that we have a criminal justice system that, in fact, is not discriminating against people because of what they look like, that finally acknowledges and takes on the problems of racial bias in the criminal justice system. That's on the ballot, not just at the presidential level or the vice presidential level, not even just at the congressional level, but also district attorneys and mayors and governors and states attorneys. All that's on the ballot. So bottom line is, every issue you care about is impacted by this election, and you have the opportunity to exercise your power. Ultimately, our power is derivative of you. You know, when I was president of the United States, I could get a lot done, but I was only able to get as much done as I had a Congress and a Senate that was supporting what I was doing and had active, informed citizens who were able to continue to push their representatives to support what we were proposing. And sometimes I hear people saying, well, you know, not enough has changed. Everything that we hoped for didn't get done during Obama's administration or under a Democratic Congress, so why bother? Well, look, government's not going to solve every problem, and it's certainly not going to do so overnight. But on every issue that you care about, if you have people who share your concerns and values, and they are in office, then things will get better. They move in a better direction. They have a significant impact on people's lives directly. And for you to give up that power means that that void is going to be filled by folks who don't care about you and don't care about the issues that you care about. Anyway, I suspect I'm preaching to the choir. Last point I'm going to make on voting is that although there is no doubt that we've seen a Republican Party that is actively trying to discourage people from voting. And I should add, by the way, this is fairly unique. You don't see other advanced democracies where you have government officials trying to make it as hard as possible to vote. But despite attempts at voter suppression, despite efforts to discourage people from voting and the misinformation that's floating around the internet, the fact of the matter is voting for the overwhelming majority of us is something that you can still get done. If you have a plan, if you've gone to something like vote.org, taken a look at what the rules are in your state, made a plan, when am I going to vote? If I'm going to vote by mail, do I make sure that I do it early? If I'm going to vote in person, is there early voting where I can show up and there's not a big crowd, which means that I'm going to be potentially safer? The truth is that when it comes to just being a citizen and doing your duty, this is not an over-taxing, over-difficult process. But it's one that we all have to be informed about. And what I'm most concerned about is everybody on this line, that all of you are going out there and reaching out to people who are less engaged, less informed, and ensuring that you're doing the job of persuading them to turn out. If we turn out, then we win, because the fact is there are more people who believe in making sure everybody has health care. There are more people who believe in having a criminal justice system that's free of racial bias. There are more people who believe in caring for our environment. There are more people who believe in providing people with a high enough minimum wage and opportunities so that they can support a family. That's the majority of Americans, but it isn't always the majority of voters, and that's what's going to make a difference.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Harris?
I'll just only emphasize what the president has said. First of all, look at just what happened yesterday. The Republican governor of Texas tried to eliminate many of the drop boxes, which is going to slash access for millions of people. So that just happened yesterday. That's on top of what happened after a case called Shelby v. Holder in 2013, where the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act and states across the country put in place almost immediately thereafter laws that were designed to suppress the vote of students, of Native people, of African Americans, so much so that in North Carolina, the Court of Appeals, which reviewed what the North Carolina legislature did, said that legislature designed a law with, and here's the quote, surgical precision to make it difficult for Black folks to vote. So to the president's point, when we look at this moment and with so much that's at stake, and he outlined it, it's access to health care, it's about protecting people with pre-existing conditions like diabetes, like breast cancer, lupus, and Michael B. Jordan, I know, has done so much work on this. There's so much at stake. It's about who's going to protect our climate and recognize the science and then invest in renewable energies, which is also about jobs. All these things are at stake. But here's the thing that we also have to realize in these next 32 days, while people in many states can vote right now, there are powerful people, see the case in Texas yesterday, who are trying to make it difficult for us to vote. And when I think about our obligation, the priority that we must have around voting, I think about it in a number of ways. One, in the context of the ancestors. Among them now, the great John Lewis, who shed his blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge for our right to vote. I think about it in the context of the suffragettes. Just last month, we celebrated the 19th Amendment, where they fought for a woman's right to vote. But do remember, it wasn't until 1965 that Black women could vote. I think about the reason to vote being to honor their struggle. I think about the reason to vote being that we have so many issues in front of us that will determine our lives and essential aspects of our life, depending on how we vote. And then I think about it in the context of this, which is to ask a question. Why are so many powerful people trying to make it so difficult for us to vote? Including, by the way, foreign interference, Russian interference, which happened in 2016 and is happening again in 2020 with misinformation, right, to turn people off or confuse people about the issues. Why is this happening? We must ask this question. And here's what I believe the answer is. The reason they are putting so much effort into making it difficult or confusing for us to vote is because they know when we vote, things change, things get better. And so let's not let them take our power from us. Let us not be deterred. Let's not let them remove our ability to know the power we have when we vote by mail, when we early vote, when we drop our ballot in that drop box, when we vote safely on election day, because it's a profound amount of power we have. And it's an expression of our voice. So let's not let anyone take that from us ever, and certainly not today. Thank you all.
Powerful. Michael, what about you?
I mean, for me, I watched the debate the other night and I saw the president, support white supremacy and racism. And I think we all know that he's a guy that will say anything to win. And let's be real, a lot of the people nowadays, they get their information from social media and watching the Proud Boys and their clickbait videos that are intended to intimidate us and scare us from voting. For me, I plan to vote early. But what else can we do to protect our votes? What else can we do to ensure that, the shenanigans, won't arise again like it did back in 2016? What are those things? Because I'm gonna vote early. I'm gonna tell everybody that I know to vote early, but what really can we do besides, just the act of voting, if that makes sense?
No, it does make sense. Let me just jump in and say a couple of things. Number one, people should not listen to folks who are suggesting that somehow if you vote by mail, it's not going to be counted, or that somehow there's going to be a whole bunch of fraud. There's a bunch of efforts to confuse and discourage. But even in 2016, there was some shenanigans going on to the extent that it had an impact. Most of it had to do with people not voting because they got wrong information. If you get the right information, you cast your ballot's counted. There's not a bunch of evidence in 2016, 2012, 2008 that your votes didn't get counted. But a lot of times stories are told, urban legends are told about how nobody's going to count the vote, or the voting's rigged, or this or that. The fact of the matter is that even in states that discourage voting, once you actually vote, the vote gets counted. So that's not something I want people to be fearful about. Now, I do think that there's some things that we could be doing. I spoke yesterday. A few people saw me in the virtual seats at the NBA Finals, in part because the NBA had partnered to ensure that we get more poll watchers at voting in person, polling places. The reason that that's important is poll watchers, a lot of times we take them for granted, but they are the ones who help move things along. If you go stand in line and you vote, or if you vote early, you walk in, there's somebody there who can say, all right, here's what you have to do. Here's how you fill it out. Here's to make sure that it's counted and sealed and put in the machine properly. And a lot of those historically have been seniors who volunteer their own time. And they do a great job. With COVID, obviously, seniors are more at risk for that exposure. So what we had yesterday is a big push to get young people in their respective communities to start volunteering to serve as poll watchers and to serve as poll workers. That can be extremely helpful, mainly just to make sure that you don't start getting big crowds and longer waits because there aren't enough people there just to help facilitate the mechanics of voting in person. And people are getting trained quickly and able to do it. And I'm hopeful that we start seeing more volunteers for that. That will be important. And the last point I just want to make is everybody who's on the line, not only should you be encouraging people to vote, but what you also need to do is encourage people to have a plan to vote. So when you say you're going to vote early, that means you've already been thinking, all right, here's how I'm going to go about it. The best thing for you to do, if you are in a state where there's early vote, use that. Don't wait on election day. Now you're going to have a long line. And who knows, if you got to get to your job, suddenly you're late, the line's not moving as quick as you want. You don't want to be in that position. So think ahead. It's just like everything in COVID right now. You got to think ahead, right? If you want to do things because you want to stay safe, it means that you've got certain restrictions. We got Michelle's mother-in-law coming to visit. Love my mother-in-law. We've made a plan to make sure that everybody in our household, even though we have no symptoms, we're going to get tested again because my mother-in-law, I'm not going to say how old she is, but she's within that band that she looks good, but she's within the band that, there's an additional threat there. So voting's the same thing. All of you who are on the line, when you talk to your friends, neighbors, parents, cousins, et cetera, ask them, when are you going to vote? Not just if you're going to vote. And that can make a huge difference. Long term, we're going to have to do all kinds of structural things to protect do a better job protecting the vote. But we're only going to be able to do that, by the way, if enough people vote this time so that we have a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House, and a Democratic president. Then we can get voting reform in to start making voting easier for people rather than harder, which is what, as I said, most advanced democracies around the world do. They don't purposely try to put barriers in for voting. They try to encourage people to vote. Kamala, I'm sorry.
Okay. Michael, also, there's a website, iwillvote.com, and just encourage people to go there to make sure that they're registered. And if they're not registered, they can register there. So it's iwillvote.com, in addition to everything that the president talked about.
Got it.
We got iwillvote.com, and we got the president going to game one to both talk about poll watchers and watch the game. Not a bad thing.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I did watch the game afterwards.
You did. You watched. Michael, I think you had a question for Senator Harris and President Obama about the pandemic.
Yeah. So, we're 7 months into the pandemic, and too many people have lost their jobs, their lives. And yet I hear Republicans, they want to end Obamacare. And yes, it is a little weird saying Obamacare. I'm looking at President Obama right now, but it's okay. It's all good. But there's a lot going on, seriously, especially for Black and brown people. So, for me, it's hard to sleep at night, but like, what keeps you up at night, and how do we fight back, once you do get in office?
Senator Harris, you want to take it first?
Sure. So let's just think about, what's happening, obviously, right now. We know that I think there are over 205,000 Americans who have lost their lives, and over 7 million people have contracted the virus. And as the president talked about quite extensively, President Obama, we have the Affordable Care Act that was the creation of his administration together with Vice President Joe Biden. It was probably one of the most significant public policy initiatives that any presidential administration has been able to accomplish in generations. It brought health care to over 20 million people who did not have it. I cannot stress enough the significance of what it did in terms of extending protections to people with pre-existing conditions. Why is that important? Well, look at how COVID has now accelerated the disparities based on race and economic status in America. The evidence of that being that African Americans and Latinos are 3 times as likely to contract the virus, twice as likely to die from it. And a large part of those numbers have to do with the longstanding pre-existing conditions based on race that have existed in America, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, lupus, cancer, things of that nature. Well, what Barack Obama and Joe Biden accomplished with the Affordable Care Act was to say, people who have those pre-existing conditions should not be barred from having coverage when, of course, they need it so much. They need access to health care that is affordable. And it seems like it could never have been that way. But before they passed the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, people with pre-existing conditions were being denied coverage, And right now, the current administration is in court, again, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act and go back to those awful days when people who had these diseases or had these pre-existing conditions would not have coverage. And think about it also in the context of COVID, in terms of the fact that 7 million people now have contracted this disease and thank God have lived. That's going to be a pre-existing condition. That's going to be the potential for lung scarring, the potential for heart damage. And so what is at stake in this election is the protection of that most important public health policy, which was the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. The other thing that we have to understand about this issue is that we're talking about racial disparities based on gender and race. So, for example, Black women, I spoke about lupus earlier, are 3 times as likely to suffer from lupus, which is an autoimmune disease. Michael, you and I both have women we love deeply in our life who have lupus. And when we look at the need for constant medical attention and treatment as it relates to that and affordable medication, that's a very big deal. The Affordable Care Act also did something that is critically important right now when we have so many people who have lost their jobs or are graduating high school and college and may not have job prospects right now, which is this. The Affordable Care Act said a young person up to the age of 26 can be on their parents' coverage. If that lawsuit that they've got in the Supreme Court to get rid of the Affordable Care Act is successful, that will no longer be the case. So there is so much at stake. Joe Biden and we have laid out a plan that would not only be about keeping the Affordable Care Act intact, but also building on its success in terms of extending its protections. And the protection would include what we need to do around prescription medications and making them more affordable and expanding access in terms of opening the exchanges and things of that nature, so that all people will have access to health care and that we will be motivated with the understanding that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it.
Mr. President?
Well, look, Kamala summarized it well. So here's one way to think about it, Michael. You've got people who are getting health insurance because of the Affordable Care Act, right? Because either they're getting subsidies to buy insurance or they've gotten Medicaid expanded in their state. That's the reason why they have health insurance. Mm-hmm. And if that's taken away, then right away you got people who just lose health insurance altogether. But you have also millions of people who have better insurance, better protections under the insurance they have already got because of the Affordable Care Act. Because it basically says to insurance companies, you've got to cover people in a certain way. You can't discriminate against people in certain ways. You've got to provide preventive care, et cetera. So if you don't have health insurance and you've gotten it through the Affordable Care Act, obviously you don't want to lose your actual coverage. But even if you don't depend on the Affordable Care Act to get coverage, you are dependent on the Affordable Care Act to make sure that the coverage you have does what it's supposed to do and treats you properly. And there's two other things that I want to emphasize. Number one, the Affordable Care Act itself was always sort of a starter home. It got the ball rolling towards universal coverage, but we have more work to do. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have a plan to expand and make even more accessible coverage, essentially to put some additions on that home. And, you know, as the family grows, you get that first little bungalow, then you gotta kind of build out. And you know, there were gaps in coverage under the Affordable Care Act, not because I wanted the gaps, because that was what we could get done at the time. If we all vote, then we've got an opportunity to fill those gaps, which means it's not just the million people who are already getting coverage through the Affordable Care Act. There are millions of more people who still need coverage. Those are people that we need to reach. And the last point I would make, there is a public health infrastructure that we rely on in order to deal with public health threats like COVID. That public health infrastructure relies on having competent people. It relies on clear leadership from the top that we're going to follow the science. It requires, honest, effective communications to the public about here's what we need to do in order to make sure that we get past this disease. And the fact of the matter is that I am confident that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will preside over an administration that says, here's what we know about wearing masks, and this is why this can prevent this disease. Here's what we know about the racial disparities, and here's what we can do to reduce those racial disparities. Here's what we know with respect to how schools can safely reopen, not just randomly reopen. Here's what we know. We want to make sure that businesses can operate, but we're going to send a clear signal about how a business operates effectively in this environment. This is stuff, by the way, that other countries have already been doing, which is the reason why our rates of death and infection have been significantly higher than countries that are of our same economic status. And for those of you who may not think that you're going to be affected directly because you've been following all the protocols and or you're young and healthy and you figure even if I get it, I'm okay. Understand that we're not going to heal the economy either until we solve the healthcare issues at stake. We can say all we want, go ahead and open restaurants. But the fact of the matter is that people aren't going to go to restaurants. I hate to say this, Michael, but they're not going to go to movie theaters. They're not going to do a whole bunch of stuff until they have some confidence that they're not rolling the dice with their health or their family's health. You think about all the parents right now who are trying to figure out, how am I supposed to be doing at-home learning with my small child, but I've also got a job that I've got to get to. And I'm not in some white-collar profession where I've got flexibility. I've got to punch a clock, but I also got a 5-year-old at home. Yep. Now, the economy is not going to heal, and those families are not going to be made whole, even if they're not sick themselves, until we solve this public health problem. That's on the ballot. One more reason to vote.
Thanks. Okay.
Now, we cannot end this without a question about Black Panther, of course. So, Michael, I think you got a question for the president and the senator about the movie that you supported.
Yeah, it's more around representation. I know in Hollywood, we talk a lot about, the power of culture and representation and whatnot. it means a lot for young kids to see themselves, especially Black kids, to see themselves on screen in movies like Black Panther, rest in power Chadwick, because none of that would be, possible without him. So when people see, you two guys on the screen, who look at you guys as real life superheroes, young and old, I felt some of that responsibility, because we also see it as power, but it's also opportunity, the places that we're able to reach, and, the platforms that we're able to be on. So can you talk about what it means to you, how you guys would use your superpowers to create real change?
Well, look, I will just say this. I am old. I am significantly older than I think the other three of you guys. So I can recall a time in which if you were a person of color on the screen, you were going to be the help. You were going to be
immediately
a bit part somewhere. There were maybe a handful of folks, Sidney Poitier, Diane Carroll, who you might see on the screen in a dignified role. And so, of course, that's important. And Michelle and I took very seriously the fact that, as the first African-American first family, we wanted people to draw some sense that they could raise their horizons and not somehow feel as if there was anything out of bounds for a young Black boy or a young Black girl, that they are able to do everything. Just like, when you have a Black astronaut, you have a Black engineer, you've got a Black movie star, you have a Black tech entrepreneur. So that's important. I want to say, though, that it's also important not just for the African-American child to see, it's important for all Americans to see. It's not just important for us to see a potential woman vice president for young girls. It's important for young boys to see a female vice president so that they understand that your worth, your power, your voice, your capacity for leadership is not gender-based. It's important for us to see Hispanic leaders and Asian American leaders and LGBTQ leaders, not just for the people who directly identify with those folks, but for people who aren't Asian American to know, I've got an Asian American mayor. They're doing a great job. So, because what happens when we see everybody having opportunity, and is that it helps to cure us of our own biases. It's not just that it reinforces our sense of power. It also helps us to see other people the way we should have seen them all along, as equal in worth and dignity and capacity, as endowed with the rights and duties and responsibilities of citizenship in this country as anybody else. And that's why I think it's so important, because it breaks us all out of that kind of mindset that says, you got to look a certain way, you got to be a certain way, you've got to be a certain gender, you've got to be a certain color in order to achieve. And the good news is for our young folks out there, I think they're getting past that. The culture is moving past that. But, if you take a look at the U.S. Senate, where both Kamala and I served, it's clear that we're not there yet. We got a ways to go. And that's true in almost every institution. I should add, by the way, that when you see the public sector starting to see better representation, oftentimes that helps to lead to the private sector asking some tough questions. And when you look at corporate leadership, and when you look at leadership of large non-for-profits, It's not just, government representation that we want to see. And hopefully when we have a Biden-Harris administration, one thing I'm confident about is they'll have the kind of representation as we had in our cabinet and administration that meant everybody said, we're all a part of this. We're all part of the American family. We got a big conception of what the American family should be, not a narrow one. There aren't some people who are real Americans and others who are not. We're all sitting at the table and all worthy of respect and having a voice.
Senator?
So to add to what the president said, we each and probably a whole lot of folks who are on this Zoom have had the experience of being the only one like you in a room, the only one who looks like you or has had your life experience. And I think part of the importance of elevating the images of who can do what and perhaps challenging notions about who can do what is to also remind people who are on that path that they are not alone. Because I will speak to folks on that point, which is that you may often be the only one like you in that room because we are still in a process of breaking barriers. To the president's point, I'm only the second Black woman in the history of the United States Senate to serve there, and currently I'm the only Black woman in a body of 100 people who serves in the United States Senate. So I say that to say that for each person who is motivated or inspired by any of the accomplishments we have achieved, always remember that you are not alone, even if looking around the room, it might feel that way. Always remember that when you are in that room, we are all in that room with you. Always remember that when you are in that room, you carry the voices of so many of us with you in that room. And so chin up, shoulders back, use that voice, know the power of that voice. And it is the power to also break those barriers. It will not be easy, but as we all know, and I think have been raised, each one pull one, right? My mother had many sayings. One of them, she would say to me, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things, make sure you're not the last. And I think that's also the responsibility that we carry when we redefine the images of who can do what, is to make it clear that it is so much bigger than any one of us. It is about all of us and expanding the horizon in terms of people's thoughts about who can do what, but also opening the door wider so that more can enter. And to emphasize the president's point, knowing that it is about inspiration for all of us and really has so much to do with the spirit of who we are as a country, which is always fighting for what can be, unburdened by what has been. So thank you, Michael, for that. And Mr. President, thank you always.
Super inspiring.
Final question. Everybody gets 15 seconds. Mr. President, what is your plan to vote? Where are you going? Mail, dropping it off, in person? What you got?
I will vote by mail. Just because when I vote in person, I got to admit, there's a fuss.
We've seen the video before.
It will slow down a whole bunch of folks. I've been voting by mail since I was elected president. I still have Secret Service, so we don't want to inhibit a polling place. My polling place, Shoesmith Elementary School, in Hyde Park, is the place that I vote in person, but we'll be voting by mail this time. It's safe, it's secure, as long as you follow the instructions and you do it in a timely way.
Michael, how about you?
I'm voting by mail also. I think the ballots come in next week, so in California, so I'm gonna send those in.
He knew when the ballot came in, folks. That was an important thing.
See,
you gotta be early. You gotta think ahead. You gotta plan for it. So yeah.
Same question as Senator Harrison for her to close as well.
Just like my two friends, I'm voting early by mail. I have crossed it off on my calendar because I made a plan that as soon as it drops, I know when it's supposed to drop, and I'm going to fill it out at my kitchen table, and I'm going to get over to the drop box, and I'm going to drop it in there as early as I can and as quickly as I can. And I want to encourage everybody again to go to iwillvote.com to make sure you're registered to vote. You know, in some places they've been trying to mess with that. So just make sure you're registered. And then look at your calendar, know the date that you can vote early, and then make a plan to do it. You know, you can have a party of one around it and just like, know that's the day you're going to sit down with your cup of coffee and fill out that ballot if you vote by mail. And let's get this thing done. Let's get it done. There's so much at stake. And on behalf of Joe and myself, I want to thank you, Mr. President, Michael B. Jordan, for everything you do. We're all in this together. 32 days to go. Let's not wake up on day 33 with any regrets. We can do this. And it is about our country. It is about the future of our country. And it is about our ability to control our fate by voting. Thank you all.
Thank you. One thing, sorry, I'm going to give one more plug. Whether you vote by mail or in person, I want everybody to vote all the way down the ballot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I say that particularly for young people, a lot of whom were protesting and rightly concerned about criminal justice issues. Most of those are determined at the state and local levels. Kamala's been a district attorney, attorney general for the state of California. She can tell you that's where decisions oftentimes are made. So
That's right.
Congress, your local elected officials, go all the way down the ballot. If you need to be educated about the stances of various candidates, because sometimes those ballots can be confusing, typically in your local jurisdiction, there are organizations that can help give you information, and even local media that will tell you the positions of various candidates. Get educated on that because that matters too.
That's right.
I want to thank President Obama, Michael B. Jordan, and of course, our next Vice President, Senator Kamala Harris. And most of all, I want to thank each of you. You are, as I said at the top of this, our grassroots supporters who are fueling this campaign every single day. And we could not do it without you. We're taking nothing or no one for granted. So again, be sure to visit iwillvote.com, make your plan, figure out what you're going to do. Be sure to bring some folks along with you for the ride. Now, President Obama would say, yes, we can. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would say, restore the soul of the nation. So together, let us all say, yes, we can restore the soul of the nation in the next 32 days. We'll see you soon, everybody. See you at the finish line.
God bless everybody.
Thank you.